Before the world knew her name, before the skies trembled at the blur of red and blue, there was only a girl from a dying world, hurled into the stars with a single mission: protect the last hope of Krypton. But fate had other plans. Her name was Kara Zor-El, cousin of Kal-El, daughter of Allura and Zor-El, born under the same red sun as her more famous relative. Kara was older than Kal-El by several years, raised with the knowledge and traditions of Krypton. She was a teenager when the planet began to die, as seismic chaos tore through their world, and the core collapsed. Kara's parents made a desperate decision. They would send their daughter away, just as Jor-El and Lara had sent their son. But Kara's mission was not survival, it was guardianship. She was to look after Kal-El on Earth, guide him as he grew, help him remember where he came from, a protector of her baby cousin, forged by tragedy. But the stars are never kind. Kara's pod was caught in the wake of Krypton's destruction, hurled off course, trapped in the Phantom Zone, a timeless void where seconds stretch into years. While Kal-El grew into a man on Earth, Kara slept in ageless stasis, untouched by time, until a freak event pulled her from that prison and finally sent her crashing to Earth. By the time she landed, Kal-El had already become Superman, legend, a symbol of hope, and Kara. She was alone, disoriented, lost in a world she didn't understand. A teenager in body, but out of time. Her mission, irrelevant. Her identity, fractured. But destiny doesn't forget. Adopted by the Danvers, family scientists and agents of the DEO Department of Extra-Normal Operations, Kara struggled to adapt. She tried to suppress her powers, to live as an ordinary girl in National City. But the universe wouldn't let her hide. When disaster struck, and lives hung in the balance, she made a choice. Not as Kal-El's cousin, not as Krypton's daughter, but as Kara. She soared through the skies to save a crashing plane, revealing herself to the world in a burst of heat vision and blazing courage. In that moment, the world gained Supergirl, but fame is a double-edged sword. While some hailed her as a heroine, others saw her as a threat, a shadow of Superman, a reckless alien. Even Kara doubted herself. How could she measure up to the Man of Steel? How could she stand tall in a world already protected? Yet over time, through battles, losses, and revelations, Kara began to forge her own legend. She clashed with alien warlords, rogue Kryptonians, and sinister Earthbound threats. She faced her own Aunt Astra in a tragic confrontation of family versus justice. She uncovered conspiracies within the DUO and stood against Project Cadmus, a group bent on alien eradication. And all the while, she wrestled with the legacy of Krypton, the pain of its loss, the pressure of its expectations, and the burden of being a symbol in a world that feared what it couldn't control. But Kara was never just a copy of Superman. She was fire and fury, compassion and courage, the embodiment of strength through vulnerability. She didn't just fight for Earth, she chose Earth. She embraced it as home. The girl who fell from the stars was no longer lost. She was rising. The world had a protector. His name was Superman. But far above the clouds, in the silence of Earth's orbit, another guardian watched from the shadows, one who shared his blood, his legacy, and perhaps his burden. Kara Zor-El had arrived. On Earth, decades late, a teenager trapped in the ageless vacuum of space, awakening into a world not her own. Her cousin, Kal-El, now stood as a symbol of hope. But what was she? Was she a relic of a lost planet, or a second chance at its future? Kara's awakening. When Kara first descended to Earth's surface, the experience was overwhelming. Her powers, sunlight-induced strength, speed, flight, heat vision, super hearing, emerged violently, uncontrolled. Unlike Kal, who had grown up, slowly adjusting to his abilities, Kara was thrust into godhood overnight. Her emotions amplified everything. A moment of fear could rupture the ground. A flash of anger could incinerate steel. The DO Department of Extra-Normal Operations was the first to make contact. Agents had tracked her crash landing and quickly realized this was no ordinary alien. It was Alex Danvers, a field agent and brilliant scientist, who reached her first not with weapons, but with compassion. Alex's empathy and her eventual revelation as Kara's foster sister became the emotional anchor Kara desperately needed. Adopted by the Danvers family, Kara tried to blend in. She enrolled in school, learned Earth's languages, watched its television, and struggled with its expectations. But hiding her light proved impossible. Becoming Supergirl years passed. Kara lived in the shadow of Superman, referred to by the media as the other Kryptonian or his cousin. But everything changed the day a catastrophic plane malfunctioned over National City. Kara was working at Catco Worldwide Media when the emergency broadcast came through. She looked up at the screen and made a choice. In a flash of red and blue, she leapt into the sky, caught the plummeting aircraft, and guided it to safety, revealing herself to the world. That day, Supergirl was born. Public reaction was immediate and divided. Some feared her strength, others saw her as a savior. But Kara, for the first time, wasn't hiding. She embraced the symbol on her chest not as her cousin's legacy, but as her own. With guidance from the DUO, her sister Alex, and even Superman himself, Kara began fighting threats that would have destroyed entire cities. Alien warlords, cybernetic assassins, rogue Kryptonians. One by one, she defeated them, not just with power, but with heart. Kara inspired, listened, cared. Where Superman represented hope, Kara became a symbol of resilience. The Martian ally among those she worked with at the DUO was Jayons, the last survivor of Mars, a telepath, a shapeshifter, and a being who, like Kara, carried the trauma of planetary extinction. Jayon became more than an ally. He became a mentor, a mirror. Together, they protected Earth from intergalactic threats that humanity couldn't even comprehend. It was through Jayon that Kara came to understand the deeper role of a hero, not just stopping violence, but building peace. Rogues and reflections, all threats came from beyond the stars. Bart Maxwell Lord, a genius billionaire and media mogul, saw Supergirl not as a savior, but as a potential tyrant. Through technology and influence, he tried to expose her weaknesses, to remind the world that unchecked power could lead to unchecked devastation. Then came Livewire, a former shock jock turned electrokinetic menace. Her vendetta against Supergirl was personal, a distorted reflection of public backlash and insecurity. Kara learned that strength alone couldn't change minds. Compassion, even in confrontation, mattered. And then there was Astra. General Astra, Kara's own aunt, had survived Krypton's fall and arrived on Earth with an army of zealots. She believed Earth was doomed to repeat Krypton's mistakes and that it was their duty to control it. The war that followed was painful, personal, and tragic. Kara was forced to face the last remnants of her bloodline and watch them fall. Heart divided even as Supergirl soared. Kara Danvers struggled. Balancing her dual identity was never easy. By day, she was an assistant at Catco, navigating deadlines, awkward romances, and a boss who demanded nothing less than perfection. Cat Grant, the media tycoon, was a force of nature, sharp, ruthless, but ultimately empowering. She saw in Kara something few others did, potential, and she pushed her to become more. Kara's romantic life was a battlefield of its own, complicated by secrets and sacrifices. From James Olsen to Manel, her relationships were marked by passion, heartbreak, and the haunting reality that being Supergirl often meant choosing the world over love. Forging her own legacy as threats grew and her legend expanded, Kara was often reminded that she was not a copy of Superman. She was something else, a warrior who had known loss, a refugee who had to adapt, a protector who led with empathy. Where Superman inspired with strength, Kara inspired with vulnerability. She showed the world that courage wasn't the absence of fear but the triumph over it, and in doing so, she carved her name into the stars, not as a shadow of Kal-El, but as Supergirl, the girl of tomorrow. The Earth had embraced her. Kara Zor-El was no longer just Superman's cousin. She was Supergirl, a hero in her own right. But heroism, she would soon learn, wasn't forged only in triumph. It was tempered in loss, sacrifice, and the burden of legacy. With every battle she fought, from alien invaders to metahuman threats, Kara was faced with the weight of her Kryptonian heritage and the expectations of two worlds. She had powers rivaling her cousins, but her path was her own. She wasn't here to replace Superman. She was here to be something different, something new. In National City, she became a symbol of hope. As Kara Danvers, she worked at Worldwide Media, hiding her powers behind glasses and an awkward smile. But even in this mundane role, she sought truth and justice. Her boss, the sharp-tongued Cat Grant, saw through the mask early on, not the cape, but the mask of self-doubt Kara wore. And it was Grant's belief in her, not Supergirl, but Kara, that helped the Kryptonian realize the full scope of her potential. Yet, peace never lasted long. When Cadmus, a secretive anti-alien organization, began its rise, Kara found herself at the center of a political and moral storm. They didn't just hate aliens, they feared her. They labeled her an outsider, a threat, a ticking time bomb. And behind Cadmus stood Lillian Luthor, a woman who had seen firsthand what Kryptonians could do. Kara could have answered fear with force, but instead she showed restraint, compassion, even when her own life was in danger. But Lillian wasn't the only Luthor watching. Lena Luthor, brilliant and ambitious, entered Kara's life not as a villain, but as a potential friend. Their relationship was complicated, built on secrets, lies, and fragile trust. Kara believed in Lena. She saw in her the possibility of redemption, the chance to break the Luthor curse. But trust, once broken, is not easily mended. And when Lena eventually learned that Kara had kept her identity as Supergirl hidden, the betrayal was profound. As the battles escalated, so did the stakes. Kara's circle grew to include allies like Martian Manhunter, Brainiac 5, and her own sister, Alex Danvers, a fierce protector and agent of the DO. Together, they faced threats from beyond the stars' reign, the World Killer, Red Daughter, a twisted clone forged by Soviet science, and even timelines rewritten by the Legion of Super-Heroes. And yet, the greatest battles Kara faced were internal. Was she Kara Danvers or Kara Zor-El? Was she Earth's protector or Krypton's last daughter? Could she ever truly belong to either world? One night, after a particularly brutal confrontation with Rain, Kara stood atop a ruined city block. Civilians huddled in fear, unsure whether to thank her or blame her. A child, clutching a Superman action figure, looked up at her and whispered, "You're like him, ... but different." That difference mattered. Kara wasn't just a symbol. She was a bridge. She embodied the hope of Krypton, the compassion of Earth, and the strength to choose her own path. She didn't wear the cape because she had to. She wore it because she believed in something better, because she believed in people, even when they didn't believe in her. As time passed, her legend grew. She wasn't just Supergirl anymore. She was a leader among heroes, a voice of reason when others rushed to violence, a light in the darkest hours. Her story wasn't just a spin-off of Superman's, it was an epic of its own, marked by trials he never faced and choices only she could make. And as new threats loomed, drips in the multiverse, cosmic storms, and enemies who whispered of a final crisis, Supergirl stood ready, not as a shadow, not as a sidekick, but as a warrior of light, a legacy reborn, a hero for tomorrow. In the heart of conflict, when all seemed lost, Supergirl stood not just as a warrior, but as a symbol, one that transcended her alien origin, her powers, even her own fears. She had become more than a cousin, more than a protector. She was the embodiment of possibility. The legacy of Krypton now beat, not just in her heart, but in every soul she inspired across the stars. But greatness comes at a price. After the death of Superman in countless timelines, some real, others illusions, Kara often found herself burdened with the responsibility of being the last bearer of the House of El. Though Kal's shadow loomed large, it never crushed her. Instead, she used it as a guiding light, forging her own legend in the spaces he once filled. One such moment came during the arrival of Rogel Zar, a brutal warlord who claimed to have been the one who destroyed Krypton. The very idea shattered Kara's emotional defenses. For years, she had held on to the belief that her homeworld had perished due to natural causes or miscalculations. Now, faced with a murderer cloaked in the blood of her people, she unleashed a fury never before seen. Their battle raged across systems, planets cracked, atmospheres burned, moons collapsed. But in the end, Kara didn't just defeat Zar with might, she overcame him with truth. She exposed his lies and made sure he faced judgment, not execution. That choice, justice over vengeance, defined the Kryptonian ideal far more than any victory in combat. Through this, she became a diplomatic emissary, a beacon among alien races. She mediated peace between warring empires, stopped galactic genocides, and even helped establish the United Planets, a coalition dedicated to preserving life across the galaxy. Her influence grew beyond Earth, as she earned names like the Silver Flame and the Guardian Star among interstellar civilizations. But back on Earth, challenges remained. Dark machinations from Lex Luthor, Brainiac, and even corrupted versions of Kara herself from parallel universes threatened the fragile hope she fought so hard to maintain. At one point, a clone known as Power Supergirl, engineered by CAD-MUs, attempted to destroy Kara's reputation and seize control of Metropolis. Kara had to face herself literally. The battle wasn't just physical, it was psychological, emotional, that only by embracing her humanity and Kryptonian heritage together could she triumph. She spared her clone, offered her a chance at redemption, and proved that power guided by compassion was the true mark of a hero. In the darkest of timelines, she was even pitted against the Anti-Monitor, where she made the ultimate sacrifice to save the multiverse. Her body shattered, her essence scattered into cosmic echoes, but legends never truly die. In the wake of her sacrifice, monuments rose, stories were told, and across galaxies, the name Supergirl became synonymous with hope reborn. Eventually, in many continuities, Kara was resurrected not through mystical trickery, but through the united wills of those she had saved. Her return was not just miraculous, it was inevitable, because Kara Zor-El, the Girl of Steel, had embedded herself into the very DNA of heroism, and she kept evolving, whether leading the Justice League, training new generations of heroes, or venturing into the cosmos to prevent threats unknown. Supergirl never stopped moving forward. Her journey was a continuous arc of growth from survivor to savior, from outsider to icon. She wore many suits, took many oaths, fought countless battles, and yet, through it all, her compass never wavered. Truth, justice, compassion, and most importantly, hope. Because Kara Zor-El was not just Superman's cousin, not just a hero from Krypton, not just a girl in a cape. She was Supergirl, and her legacy would shine for eternity across the stars.